The first clue was subtle. Those things that the brain registers, but we push under the carpet of tiredness. A strange beep from the circuit breaker, a tiny flicker of light, details that would normally go unnoticed. But when the next month's electricity bill arrived, it came with such arrogance that not even the envelope could disguise it. Almost $300 over the average. This, in a house where the most luxurious thing on is the ceiling fan in the living room, which makes more noise than wind. I went through the appliances, unplugged everything, and tested them for a week, as if I were on the battlefield. One by one, lamp by lamp. Even with everything switched off, the energy consumed was surreal. I began to think that my light clock had been possessed by some entity tired of paying bills. It was only after a lot of conspiracy theories that I decided to call an electrician. The guy arrived all smiles, wearing a Super Mario t-shirt, and in less than an hour, he unleashed a sentence that made me feel like I'd been punched in the face. There's a junction here that shouldn't exist. Someone is drawing energy from your painting. I remained silent. A silence that only those who have been robbed know. Not the street thief who snatches your cell phone and runs. I'm talking about that behind-the-scenes theft. The kind that makes you wonder if you haven't been playing the fool for much longer than you think. I followed the thread, literally. It was a whimsically embedded extension cord, a meticulously crafted electrical crime. It ran underneath my side wall, camouflaged by a layer of recently disturbed earth. And, on the other side, her house. The woman who moved in 6 months ago with all the pomp of someone who believes she's raising the market value of the street just by being there. The same woman who once told me, without laughing, that white hydrangeas bring a more neutral vibe to the neighborhood. She had made a cat, a little electrical outlet, a criminal detour, residential parasitism. I went back inside with my blood boiling. I couldn't even eat. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the fan turning slowly, as if even it was disappointed. My sweat wasn't just from heat, it was from indignation. And here's an important detail. My house has an electric fence. I installed it last year after my neighbor had his bicycle stolen. It's not the kind that knocks people down, but it scares. It gives a reasonable shock, enough to teach him a lesson. And that's when my idea was born. Not from the brain. It was born out of anger. That anger that comes from the stomach, spreads through the veins and up the spine until it touches the nerves. I was going to reconnect that wire to the electric fence. But first, I documented everything. I took photos. I filmed the path of the cable. I recorded the electrician explaining. Not because I was going to run to the police. That would come later if I needed it. But because I knew that woman, with her perfect diction and artificial lavender perfume, was going to deny it to the death. She was going to say that she would never do anything so vulgar. So I needed proof. The next morning, with the precision of a surgeon, I reconnected. The wire that had previously fed the lady's house with the energy from my work now went straight to the fence. The voltage was regulated to give just one scare, but a memorable one. I went to work with a smile I hadn't seen for months. The kind of smile that only those who have been set up feel. I left my cell phone on silent mode and spent the day imagining the moment. Her hand, probably gloved, touching something metallic. A buzzing sound, a muffled scream, a stumble, the horror of not understanding what had happened. The walk home was almost ceremonial. I put the key in the door with the calm of someone expecting applause. But there was no audience. Only the complicit silence of the walls. It wasn't until dawn that I heard it. A strange noise coming from the street. A mixture of stumbling and grunting. I went to the window and saw the silhouette. The woman, staggering, with a flashlight in her hand, watching the corner of the fence as if she were in front of a UFO. She touched the gate with the tip of a screwdriver. A dry snap, and the scream echoed so beautifully that it could have been the soundtrack to revenge. She fell sitting on the ground, knocking over the lantern. Then she got up slowly, looking around as if she had been struck by a divine revelation. The next day, no one came to talk to me. No accusations, no apology. But the cable was gone. It disappeared into thin air as if it had never existed, buried by shame or fear, who knows. But what she did after that, well, that was the beginning of the climb, because she didn't stay quiet. When these people feel they've lost control, they do their best to pull the rope back, and sometimes they pull so hard that they hang themselves. 2 days passed, and the street remained suspiciously peaceful. No one commented on anything. There were no posts in the neighborhood group or anonymous complaints to the town hall. Silence. And, for a moment, I thought it was over, that the shock had worked as a kind of exorcism and that the neighbor was finally going to stick her arrogance where the sun doesn't shine. But people like that don't go away. They recede just enough to make you believe that it's over. And then, when you least expect it, they come back, not with logic, not with reason. They come back with a dramatic twist. And that's exactly what she did. On Friday morning, I was leaving for work when I found an envelope taped to my mailbox. No stamp, no seal, no sender. A printed piece of paper with formal lettering and justified spacing. Visually neutral, like the entrance mats she was so fond of. But the content, my friend, it was worthy of a courtroom script. The document, and she had the audacity to call it a spontaneous extrajudicial notification, said that, due to a suspicion of deliberate electrical hostility, she was opening an informal investigation into dangerous actions carried out against the physical integrity of residents of the community. It was there, in writing. The woman was basically accusing me of trying to kill her with a wire. Of course, she didn't use the word shock. She used non-consensual discharge of current, I swear. She said that her doctors had identified a sudden trauma caused by unexpected electrical stimulation. In other words, she tried to pass herself off as a victim of torture because of the fright she got from her own Gambiara. I stared at the paper for a good few minutes. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another wanted to go to her house and rub the electrician's report in her face until the shame became a tattoo. But then I took a deep breath, because I knew exactly what she wanted. Open conflict. She wanted drama. People like that feed off the chaos they create. So I did what she hates most. Nothing. I didn't answer. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't write anything in the street group. I only shared the document with a few close neighbors, who, of course, laughed. And I went on living my life. But ignoring someone like that is like stoking a bull with an invisible cloth. They can't accept emptiness. She needs a reaction, noise, an audience. And without being able to provoke me, she decided to target the whole neighborhood. The following Sunday, a car from the electricity company pulled up in front of my house. 2 technicians who looked like they'd seen worse, but were still surprised. They said they had received an anonymous complaint about irregular interference in the property's power supply system. Of course, it was her. The attempt to disguise her authorship was as subtle as a cow wearing high heels. I let the guys in, showed them everything, explained. The 2 of them analyzed the power panel, looked at the electric fence, and in the end, only one of them commented, "This place is safer than the City Hall network." I smiled. They left. Case closed. Another failed attempt. But the woman didn't give up. On Tuesday, a new theater began. She installed cameras. Yes, several. Aimed directly at my house. One on her wall, another on a tree, which, by the way, used to be mine, but the branches encroached on her land, and she took advantage of it. 2 more strategically hidden among the potted plants. Her justification? Preventive monitoring against energy sabotage. Now, every time I left the house, I was greeted by 4 electronic eyes recording my every move. Even the mailbox became a Big Brother set. She even made a handmade sign, 24-hour observation zone. You are being filmed for your own safety. I began to suspect that, apart from the wire, she was pulling something from another dimension, perhaps straight from the black hole of common sense. The recordings became episodes of a series that only she watched. She sent emails to the residents with prints, trying to point out suspicious behavior. One of them was me watering my plants. Another was my weekly visit to the energy meter. She even went so far as to say that my hose behaved anomalously, as if I had developed a secret liquid infiltration technology. Nobody cared. In fact, it became a laughing stock. The neighbors started posing in front of her house. There was one who danced the Macarena on purpose, just to see if she would send him a printout. And she did. 3 images, with red markings, pointing to the movement of her hips. She was at a level of paranoia that can only be solved with a bucket of cold water and a mirror. The problem is that people in this state never stop digging. If no one takes the shovel out of their hand, they dig until they find the bottom. And when they think they've reached the bottom, they dig some more. That's when she made the stupidest decision of all. The attempt to take revenge escalated to a physical level. And when it involves structures, wires, and electricity, it becomes a police case. The first spark of chaos arrived on a sunny morning, one of those that should only be used to hang out clean clothes and listen to birds. But in the world where this woman exists, not even the sun has any peace. I was in the backyard washing the dog's rug when I heard a strange noise coming from outside, a metallic hum, interrupted by dry thuds, as if someone was hammering a pot in anger. I approached carefully, looking over the wall, and there she was, in navy blue plumber's overalls, kneeling on the ground like some kind of tech surge nun. She was digging. Yes, digging, with a garden tiller and a pair of pliers by her side. She seemed to have dug a trench behind her light meter. At first, I thought he was doing some plumbing, but then I saw a spool of turquoise electric wire and a new extension cord with a label hanging from it. She was redoing the cat, only this time with more sophistication. The woman was trying to install a professional branch of my system. If before she'd pulled a little wire disguised as a root, now she wanted to set up an underground system, probably fueled by some video she'd seen on YouTube about how to bypass the energy meter without getting arrested. The touch of class, a portable cooler on the side, with a bottle of sparkling water and slices of lemon. An apocalypse engineer with a thirst for freshness. That was beyond belief. Not only had she tried to turn me into a free energy supplier, she thought she could do it in style. And this time, with the arrogance of someone who thinks she's technically untouchable. I spent the day digesting it like someone swallowing a screw. I wanted to run to the fence and scream my head off, but I knew that screaming was what she wanted. She lived for a reaction. It was fuel for her madness. So I took a deep breath and decided to document everything again. I installed a discreet camera in the corner of the roof, facing the exact spot where she was digging. The next morning, I reviewed the images. The woman worked from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., taking breaks to stretch and read a book that looked like a residential electrical installation guide. In one part of the video, she smiles at the camera. She didn't know she was being filmed, but it looked like she was posing for posterity, an energy sociopath. On the third day of work, she appeared with a helper, a skinny guy who looked like he'd do anything for $50 and a bottle of Gatorade. He carried tools and laughed at her instructions as if she were a NASA engineer, and he was the trainee about to blow everything up. That was the day the bomb went off. It wasn't more than 20 minutes after the helper arrived. A dry crack echoed down the street, followed by a high-pitched scream. It wasn't pain, it was surprise, mixed with panic. The kind of sound you only hear when someone thinks they've made a great mistake, and then discovers they've created a monster. I ran in front of the house. The scene was a masterpiece of human stupidity. The boy was lying on the ground, his hands trembling, surrounded by smoke and the smell of burning wires. She, her face as white as a freshly painted wall, was holding a smoking screwdriver. The cat they were riding bounced straight into her frame. The voltage was so high that it melted part of the metal structure she had buried as a protective base. One neighbor called SAMU, another, the electricity company. I just watched, not out of sadism, but because right then and there I realized that it was over. She'd gone too far, and now there was no turning back. While the ambulance was taking away the still groggy helper, The technicians from the electricity company arrived. They cut off all the power to her house and started searching the system. What they found would make a master's thesis on stupidity. Inverted connections, poorly fitted fuses, insulating tape stuck together with sticky tape, and, best of all, an adapter bought on the internet that promised to discreetly redirect consumption to neighbors. The woman, cowering in her garden chair, tried to pretend she was a victim. She said that she had hired the guy because the electrician in town was very busy, and that she had no idea he would use such aggressive methods, as if she herself hadn't supervised the installation with a spreadsheet in hand. "I'm just a resident trying to solve a problem of excessive consumption in an alternative way," she said, with the biggest scowl on her face. The power company technician just blinked. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The wiring was confiscated. Her meter was isolated. Her energy bill was recalculated. The estimate was at least $6,000 in undue consumption, and the risk of fire posed by the Gambiara was classified as red level. A few days later, I received a letter from the town hall informing me that the case was under legal review. But the best was yet to come. The news was broadcast on local radio, and with that, the whole town heard about the crazy electricity administrator. But she didn't stop. What was left of her sanity was now clinging to one last card, one that would involve emotional blackmail, manipulation of the neighbors, and a proposal that no one saw coming. After the tragic scene of the short circuit and the arrival of the technicians from the electricity company, it seemed that the woman would finally have to accept reality. Her bill was recalculated, the system isolated, and her helper spent 3 days in hospital because of the shock. But to believe that this woman would stop, there was to give too much credit to her common sense. People like that don't understand the concept of end. The public shame had already spread. The story of the gourmet cat even reached WhatsApp groups in neighboring districts. Mothers from the city's private school made memes with her face and captions like, "It's not theft if the wiring is organic." It became a national joke when a YouTuber reacted to the recording of the camera I had installed on the roof. The woman, her hair flying, shouting, "It wasn't supposed to shock," became a WhatsApp sticker in less than 24 hours. Anyone with an ounce of pride would have retreated. They'd disappear for a while, but not her. The neighborhood was quiet for a week, as if it were a breather between acts of a badly written play. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, I received a printed invitation at the gate, fancy weight paper, gold lettering, and a stamp that read, "For a more connected community, energy is sharing." Yes, she had invented an event. In the invitation, she said she was organizing a solidarity assembly, where she would discuss an innovative project, an energy sharing system between residents. The idea? To create an internal network where houses with an energy surplus could supply those experiencing temporary difficulties. In other words, she wanted to turn her crime into a social project. The invitation also listed the benefits of the proposal: cost savings, a sense of community, valuing neighborly relationships, and emotional independence from energy monopolies. It cited fictitious sources, such as an Institute for Ethical Suburban Consumption, which clearly doesn't exist. I put the paper on the table and stared at it for a few minutes, trying to understand where in her mind this plan made sense. She wanted us to ignore everything she had done, from the theft to the short circuit to the attempt to blame others, and still embark on an electric Robin Hood project with her in cloak and sword. On Saturday, the assembly took place. At the beginning of the event, 4 people showed up: 2 curious people, a neighbor who didn't know about the history, and a guy who thought it was a church meeting. She set up a projector, showed slides with fake graphs, and used terms like circular economy of light. "We are light, and light is shared. You don't charge for it," was the phrase she unleashed into the microphone, her eyes full of plastic emotion. Even her neighbor, who had come out of politeness, was embarrassed. At the end of the presentation, She offered a registration form to anyone who wanted to be part of the energy revolution in the neighborhood. The result? Nobody signed it. No one. The guy from the church even asked if there would be cake and went away, disappointed. The next day, she decided to change tack. She sent anonymous letters to some residents, saying that I was responsible for the whole hostile atmosphere in the street and that I was manipulating the neighbors with videos and false victim narratives. The letter was unsigned, but in the same font she used for her invitations. A bold, spaced-out Arial that shouted, "Yes, it's me, but I don't want to take it on." At that point, no one could take it anymore. The woman wasn't just a troublesome neighbor. She had become a living meme. People started to avoid going past her house. Children called the electric fence the wall of the socket witch. The atmosphere was one of disguised pity. Even those who had previously turned a blind eye began to comment. They said she needed help, guidance, limits, something that probably nobody had given her during her childhood. That's when her final card arrived. The email. She sent it to the whole neighborhood with the subject line, "Official apology and proposal for energetic reconciliation." The text was a 4-page manifesto in which she asked for understanding for what she called a series of technical mistakes, and stated that everything she had done was out of love for the balance of the community. At the end, she suggested that everyone join together to finance collective solar panels, managed by her. It wasn't just crazy anymore. It was an attempt at an emotional coup, to use guilt and general weariness to become the savior of the country that she herself had sunk. But the neighborhood was unanimous. No one responded. Nobody showed up. And, for the first time since she arrived, she was completely ignored. Absolute silence. A few days later, a removal van turned up. She drove off without saying goodbye, without saying where. No more theater. Today, her old house is up for sale. In the realtor's ad, no one mentions the history, but we know. The story goes around. It's told around barbecues, at late-night cafes, in messaging groups. And every time someone new is interested in the house, the neighbors just say, "It has to be someone with both feet on the ground, preferably barefoot, so you don't get shortchanged again." And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.